Hey there. Thanks for checking out the BagOChipZ Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Manuel, and on this episode, I am joined by my friends Luke and Natalie as we discuss the cultural phenomenon that is Spider-Man: No Way Home. To get access to the full and unedited version of the podcast, please consider subscribing to our Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Enjoy the show. Anyway, do you guys want to get into talking about No Way Home?
Yes. Let's do it.
Okay. So Luke and I saw it together back in January, like weeks after it came out. And Luke, you had seen it before that, if I'm not mistaken.
So I was able to get my excitement out in the first go-around.
Right. And you saw it with like
it, Luke?
What?
When did you first see it?
A couple days, either the day before it came out or a couple days later.
Okay, I saw it on Boxing Day. And then I saw it again, actually, when I came out of my COVID, quarantine.
Gotcha.
Do you say, is it Merry Boxing Day or Happy Boxing Day?
It's just Boxing Day.
No, if you're wishing someone a Happy Boxing Day.
Who has ever wished anyone a Happy Boxing Day?
Well, you're supposed to wish the homeless people a Happy Boxing Day, because that's what it's for.
I've never said Happy Boxing Day in my life.
Wait, how is the Boxing Day for homeless people?
Yeah.
Am I just stupid?
Because
No.
Boxing Day means it's not about boxing. It's about boxing up gifts for the less fortunate and materials.
Oh, okay. So they get
No, understanding. It was that's the day you opened up your presents. Boxing Day.
Unboxing Day.
Yeah, so you give the presents on Christmas and then you wait the next day to open them. But no one does that.
No one does that, yeah.
What kind of sick world?
No one actually followed that. I never even followed that as a kid.
Yeah.
Good.
So Natalie, I've already heard a little bit of Luke's thoughts about it because we talked about it a little bit after we watched it. But I'm really curious to get like your thoughts before we get into the conversation, because it sounds like you had a lot to say about it. And I'm just kind of curious to hear, like, what were your initial impressions and, like, how do you feel about it now that you've had some time away from, like, actually seeing it in theaters?
I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done. There are, of course, it's not perfect. There are probably, like, some points that could have been improved. But honestly, overall, I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought the pacing was right. Most of the characters were well developed. Not all of them. That's one of the bad parts, I thought. But I had a blast. And I have mostly good things to talk about.
Cool. Okay. Very good. Yeah, I think, I mean, based on how our previous discussion on the movie, Luke, I feel like I'm kind of going to be, like, Natalie's going to be mostly positive. I'm going to be, like, kind of in the middle, and you might be a little bit more negative. I know you liked it, but, like, obviously, I think you'll probably have the most criticism for it
I'm
out
glad
of the three
I
of
liked
us.
it. Can you imagine if we all didn't like it? This would be like a...
Well, I'm actually glad, because we kind of have, like, a mixed spread of, like, opinions on it. I think we could have, like, an interesting discussion about it. So, Luke...
wait, sorry, Adam, to cut you.
No,
I
go
just
ahead.
realized something. I've got an important question. Are we allowed to swear?
Oh, hell yeah. Fuck yes. Of course. Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't give a fuck. This ain't your mama's podcast. No, I don't know.
All right.
Anyway, Luke.
Bad words.
Bad words, yeah. What, so you saw it first, I think, with your brother and maybe some other people. What was your experience when because you saw it, I think, like in a really packed theater for your first viewing. I was, like, traveling all throughout the holidays and, like, in the lead up to the holidays. Like, the reason I wasn't able to see it until, like, mid-January is because I was just, like, my, like, winter, like, break was just, like, slammed. I had no free time. And even getting back to the city and, like, getting back to home, like, I still didn't have much time until we actually went and saw it in January. But what was your, like, what was your, like, theater experience like? I'm curious to hear more about that.
Bunch of nerds.
So I guess they were like cheering and whooping.
Well, no, that's fine. I have no problem with that because I cheer, I whoop. I get that. That's
Love
fine.
that.
But
I love that.
There was one part, and Adam, I told you about this. During the post-credit scene with Doctor Strange, the people next to us said, "Fuck Spider-Man, I'm hyped for Doctor Strange." It's like, no. Doctor Strange is great, but you never say that about Spider-Man. You never do. You're all stupid, and you don't know what's good for you.
I'm glad you said that.
Did you actually say that out loud to them?
No, Justin and I just looked at each other, and Justin said, "A bunch of fucking nerds."
That's great. I'm glad you guys recognize that this person is a fool and a buffoon. But, it's fun. When you said that this person said that, like, out loud around you, I was like, I've recently been rewatching Community, and there's that scene where, in season 1 where Britta says to Senor Chang, like, I think she's being accused of cheating on, like, a Spanish test, and Britta says, and, like, Chang's trying to, like, shame her and, like, threatening to give everyone a 0 in the class, so she takes the blame for it, and she's like, you should be ashamed of yourself, like, people don't turn on each other this easily, and Chang's like, oh yeah, turn on her, and then points at her, and everyone, like, just throws shit at her. That's like the scene I imagined of this guy being like, fuck Spider-Man, I want Doctor Strange. Everyone just immediately just throws like popcorn and soda at him in the middle of the theater. That's kind of that
would have been great.
That was my headcanon of how this situation played out. And then you and Justin said fucking nerd and shamed them for their wrong opinion. But yeah, so Luke, like, beyond your theater experience, what are your, I guess, like, general, before we get into, like, the nitty-gritty, start talking spoilers and, the plot and stuff, like, what is your kind of general opinion now that you've had some time to, like, sit with the movie and, like, what do you think about it?
Sure. My first opinion of it, which I still hold to, was that it was the best of the Marvel Spider-Man movies.
Best of the Tom Hollands?
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
At the same time, it was a very weak storyline. And
them fighting words.
You mean, actually.
Them fighting words. But no, it's okay. I want to hear. Let Luke finish what he has to say.
Oh, you want me to get into that now?
No. Just beyond, like, is that like is that your final thoughts on, like, just general thoughts before we get into, like, talking about the plot?
It was fun. Mm-hmm. I can say that.
It was definitely hype as fuck.
Right.
Yeah. There was a lot of whoop-worthy moments, a lot of hollering, a lot of, like, oh shit, it's that guy. Oh, I know that guy. Wow. Oh man. Like, a lot of stuff like that for sure.
I had a lot of those moments. Yeah.
And I definitely can cop to being one of those people.
Oh yeah, me too. For what the movie set out to do, it did a really good job at. It just could have been better story-wise.
Okay. I'm really interested to get into it. I think I've heard some of your thoughts on it, but I'm really interested to kind of understand more about, like, why you feel that way. And I think there's merit to that, and I'm looking forward to getting into it. So, Natalie, I also, before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty, I kind of want to hear about your theater experience as well. Was it hype? Was it packed?
It was packed. When I watched on Boxing Day, obviously that was in Sydney, and I went with my dad, so I had to fill in with my dad and his girlfriend on what Spider-Man was because they didn't know anything about it. This was our annual daddy and daughter movie date, and then of course we had the girlfriend come along.
Yeah, but, third wheeling. That girlfriend always third wheeling with you guys.
Yeah, but she had fun. And there were, like, it was a packed theater, but I was clearly the loudest person in terms of reacting. I don't talk in movies. I'm not that person. But I mean, I was the one that was reacting. I was whooping.
Yeah.
And all those things that you would whoop at. I was that person.
Oh, yeah. I remember when
I heard outside the U.S. they don't do that.
They do it for Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
They do it for Andrew Garfield, our our UK hero, our British hero.
Yep.
And no, that's great. And it's so it's just so funny to me that you took your dad, who you just said knows like nothing about Spider-Man. You had to like this might be like the worst movie to like take someone who knows nothing about Spider-Man to, because it assumes you know so much about everything. Yes. Like everything is an Easter egg. Like it's just like without like any context, it's like, why is everyone clapping at these like two other guys dressed like Spider-Man? Like, who's this guy with sunglasses who just caught a brick out flying through the window? Why are people cheering for that? I don't know. You know, it's just like there's a lot of stuff. I'm sure someone who isn't familiar with the storied history of Spider-Man adaptations in film would be privy to. So it's interesting that. What did your dad think of it? I'm just curious.
Well, that's actually what happened. Everything that you just said. Like, I literally would whoop, and my dad's girlfriend would be like, "What happened?" And I'd have to explain it.
But they liked it. They had a good time.
No, they did. They had a good time. They liked it. It's fun. Cool.
They weren't super confused the whole time. I guess they were.
Well, you know, it's funny. My dad made a comment later when we watched it. He's like, "These movies are just so brilliant in how they make the fighting scenes." And I was like, "Yeah, that's true." Like, he didn't completely understand the storyline, but the fight choreography and everything that comes together to actually make the action come alive. Like, he could just appreciate that on its own.
Oh, yeah. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. The choreography is... This is some of the best choreography in a Spider-Man movie, I think. Like, I've been on record saying that I think some of the Sony Spider-Man movies had, like, better choreography, or like more like I like what some of their action set pieces more, but I actually thought this particular movie did a really, really great job with that, like better than the previous ones. So I was very impressed with that. But yeah, if we're done with like generalities, I guess let's start talking about, I don't know, the plot. Or just
I just gotta say, I really disagree with the fighting thing.
Oh, really? What do you have to? What are your thoughts on that?
I thought the fight with the first and last fight with Green Goblin were good. Everything else I didn't care.
Willem Dafoe really packs a punch.
Oh, he's the greatest actor alive.
Nope. I mean, like, you know, figuratively and physically. Like, I thought his fight scenes, and he actually did them.
Spoilers for anyone listening past this point. If in case anyone hasn't seen Spider-Man. Anyway, continue.
even though in its totality, the train scene is the best Spider-Man fight sequence in any Spider-Man movie. The ending of Spider-Man 1, the final fight, that is the best Spider-Man fight because of how brutal it is.
It's really good. I will say a lot of the how do I put it? I love Spider-Man 1 with Tobey Maguire, but I think that movie has like some elements that are much more like noticeably low budget and like haven't necessarily aged well in terms of the presentation as compared to...
You mean like the gay joke?
Well, there's that. I'm not really talking about that though. I'm mostly just talking about like the actual presentation itself. Like it's like when the Green Goblin in Spider-Man 1. Oh, by the way, anyone who's listening, spoilers for literally every Spider-Man movie ever, because we're going to talk and reference all of them, because you can't talk about this movie without also talking about the Tobey Maguire or the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, and also the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. I actually haven't even seen 2, but you know, we're gonna reference these
and the spin-offs, right? I mean, and the comics. And
wait, you haven't seen Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, or just 2?
I've seen 1. I haven't seen 2.
Oh, you should see 2. That was actually really good.
I just heard it was bad, so I didn't see it.
I heard it was Batman Robin bad.
I mean, I actually like Batman and Robin.
Really enjoyed it.
I actually really like Batman and Robin, but I heard it was not very good. But I'm willing to be proven wrong, and maybe I will watch it when I'm high and really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's probably how you enjoy it.
Anyway, so So yeah, actually, before we get into like talking about the plot, can we like each talk about a little bit about like our history with like like Spider-Man as like a character and like what we. I'm sorry. I know earlier I was like, I just want us to talk about this like we're talking about it as if we were like together in a room and just like having a natural flowing conversation. But I've gone into podcast mode. I'm sorry, guys. I have like prompts and questions that are coming to mind. So I'm sorry. Right. But anyway, but I actually think it would be good to like talk a little bit about like our histories with the character and like, you know, whether it just be like we started, you know, we watched the movies as a kid and like we just got really attached to them, or like, you know, you don't particularly have a lot of history with the character, like Natalie's dad, for instance. Like, I guess starting with Natalie, could you kind of tell me like what what was your intro to like Spider-Man as like a pop culture figure, and like how like did this movie impact you more because it had like a lot of references to like previous movies? I guess like just in general, like how did that if you could go into that a little bit, that would be awesome.
So I guess it was all really just started with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 1.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was other superhero movies before that, but it's probably arguably the first like family-friendly superhero movie. Yeah. I did not grow up reading comics.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a huge history with Spider-Man in the comics. It's really just with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, you're
not. But I remember seeing it as a little girl and just being like, you know, this is something so different at the time. We did not have films like that. So when that came out, it was just huge and visually beautiful, exciting. It's just, I loved it. And actually did end up buying the DVDs for it after it came out and everything, you know. So I was that person. I had the DVDs and I loved the movie. And I do love Sam Raimi as a director. It's probably also another connection to my Spider-Man history in a way, just because I love Sam Raimi. I think he's brilliant.
Oh yeah. Had you seen other Raimi movies when you saw his Spider-Man movies, or was that your first introduction to
that would probably be my first, because I was a little girl then, and then later on I saw his other films.
Gotcha. So you kind of got the context to his like style later on.
Exactly, yeah.
That's cool. I also I didn't start reading Spider-Man comics until after I had seen the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, I think. Like I only started reading like the old classic Ditkos in like middle school or something, and I had already seen most of those movies. But yeah, it's funny, I think, that you say like there weren't movies like that at the time, because I feel like a lot of people today, like, you know, like younger people, they've grown up in like the Marvel era where there's a new superhero movie like, you know, every other month or, you know, or like every few months kind of. And it's like there's almost like an oversaturation of that type of media now, but like it was actually pretty bold to like make movies like that at the time. Like we had the Christopher Reeves Superman movies. Is that the guy's name, Luke? Christopher Reeves?
Yeah, Christopher Reeve.
Christopher Reeve, right.
No, Reeve. George Reeves is the one from the 50s. Christopher Reeve is the one from, you know,
yeah. The Christopher Reeve movies are great, and but I think like to like
the first two are great. 3 and 4 suck.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I haven't seen them in a long time, but I remember liking the first two. Yeah. But I feel like we hadn't had like those were made quite a while ago, and I feel like for people growing up in like the late 80s like or early 90s, like we didn't really have a like something like that. The closest thing we had were the Batman movies that were coming out at that point in time, but those had kind of sort of in a way became more about selling toys. And not to say that the Raimi Spider-Man movies didn't have a huge marketing push to like get toys in the hands of kids, but I think there was just so much heart behind that original trilogy. Even the third one, and I'll die on that hill, you know, going to bat for that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was really impressive, just like how much it was really like going back to that movie trilogy and watching each of them. It really feels like kind of like a like there is sort of like a coming of age story going on, and it definitely is one of the movies that made me be such like a weird superhero person who likes that type of media now. And it's hard for something to like scratch the height of like, with those movies, and then like the Dark Knight trilogy. It feels like there was kind of like superhero movies were movies. Like they had like, character drama and like, like actual like stakes and fucking shit like that. And like they were like not like a series of, never-ending stories that kind of like built like snowball into other stories that get made into movies and whatnot, like we have with Marvel, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but they definitely like kind of felt like standalone things, and like it was really impressive. And I remember like really liking that kind of like those early superhero movies that were coming out, and yeah, Spider-Man was definitely, I have a lot of nostalgia for that series. What about you, Luke?
Well, just to touch what you some of the stuff you said, I recently rewatched the first Spider-Man over Thanksgiving because it's a Thanksgiving movie, and I was amazed at how well it's aged. The movie is 20 years old this year.
Did your husband tell you to say that? Sorry.
Yes.
When you say how well it's aged, I just can't. Like, I always think of that that's horrible joke.
One thing that hasn't aged well. The one thing.
There's some other things, but we can get into it later. But
okay, sure. Effects. I mean, story wise and all.
The story's good, but for the most part, yeah.
The movie is what made me notice. I've never noticed such good blocking in a movie before.
Can you explain that for the folks at home?
Sure. Sorry. Like, okay. Tobey Maguire is like 5'8", Willem Dafoe 5'7".
Mm-hmm.
They had them stand. The camera was angled in such a way, and they had them stand in such a way where they looked like they were completely equal height.
Yeah.
And there was another scene where 5'7" Willem Dafoe and 5'11" James Franco. Remember when they hug in the end?
Yes.
Yeah, they had them the same height. And if you're really looking at it, you think to yourself, well, how did they do that? They had Willem Dafoe stop on the first step, so they were eye to eye. Because if he had gone to the landing where James Franco was, it wouldn't have been that. And I just thought that was a great directorial bit by Sam Raimi, who, as Natalie said, is a genius.
Yeah,
wow. And I think one of the reasons, and this is what getting into you said, the Sam Raimi movies are better than all of the other ones, even at their weakest, is because Sam Raimi genuinely cares about Spider-Man. Mark Webb, he's a good music video director. John Watts exists. But Sam Raimi cares about the characters, and it's very obvious. So, first impression with Spider-Man. I'm the nerd here, apparently. Did either one of you play the PS1 Spider-Man game?
No, I played a little bit of Web of Shadows. That's the one.
That's a really good game. But
That's
the PS1 Spider-Man game, the comics, the 90s cartoons, and Sam Raimi, all in the same time frame, was my first real experience with Spider-Man.
Sounds like you had a much more like well-rounded kind of like, like you were, instead of me and Natalie who kind of like dived into the deep end, with the Raimi movies, and just kind of like it sounds like you like kind of like eased your way into like the Spider-Man pond, and kind of like experienced like all sorts of instances of the character, and you had a more well-rounded view of what the character was, perhaps.
Maybe that's a way of looking at it, but for the longest time, he still is my absolute favorite Marvel character and my third favorite overall. But I really only talked about him. If we're talking about superheroes. There was no Superman. There was no Batman. Like that. Yeah, they were on the back burner. They were cool. They were nice, but they weren't Spider-Man. Wow. And sometimes it still feels the same. Yeah.
That's crazy, considering how much I know you love Superman.
Yeah. Well, and when I say Spider-Man is my third favorite, it's not like if I could show you a degree of 1, 2, 3, the horizontal line that says 1, 2, 3, it wouldn't even look a bit diagonal at all. You'd have to look at it under a microscope to see that it's slanting downward, 1, 2, 3.
So it's close.
Right. I love Spider-Man, which is why I loved a lot of things in the movie and did not love a lot of things in the movie.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get into it, I guess. Like the actual movie itself. So, so Natalie, I want to start with a less like not to discount Luke's perspective at all, but I kind of want to start with like a little bit of like a less jaded perspective going into our discussion, just to kind of open with our our best foot of like what we really like. So actually, maybe that's a good place to start. Let's first start talking about what we all liked about the movie. And Natalie, let's start with you. What were the things, like 3 things that you were just like that were like your favorite things about this movie, or like really stood out to you?
Okay, what really stood out to me was how this movie sort of blew a hole into the storytelling of not just Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but the other Spider-Man as well. With this movie setting the tone that it did, we can now have other films from Andrew Garfield, other films from Tobey Maguire, if we wanted. Like, we basically blew a hole open in all the universes just from this one film, and the possibilities are almost endless. That was one thing I thought about when I left the theater. I was like, wow, they did such a good job. Now we can have like a old Toby Spider-Man movie, something like Logan. We could actually have Amazing Spider-Man 3 now without being ridiculous or out of place. Because we have Tom Holland Spider. Like, this is all possible now.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be just ridiculous. That's what I loved about it.
That's great. Yeah, that's really cool.
My mind was blown, really. The other things that I liked was that I thought the pace was really good. And I think you two might argue with me. I've had other people argue with me about it. That, it's too long. It's just too long.
The pacing was great.
I thought the pacing was so good. If I think about time when I'm in a movie, when the movie is long, then the pacing's off. The pacing's off, and that they sort of fucked that up a little bit. I never thought about time in this movie. This is a long movie, but I never thought about time when I was in there. And when I came, I was like, okay, they did a really good job. I know there was some plot holes, but I was sucked into this world and I was here to stay. So I thought the pacing was really, really good. I also loved the final character development for Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
Oh my God. I have so much to say about that, but you go ahead. I'll get into it later. You can go ahead and talk about it.
Oh, you want me to talk more?
If you want to. If you just, that's a fine place to leave it. But yeah, I loved what they did with Holland's character arc, and I'm definitely gonna get really into that, but I have almost so much to say about it that I don't want to talk about it right now, because because for me that's kind of more so than anything else. And I guess this is getting into like what I really, what stood out to me about this movie, and like, yes, I love the fact that it like kind of bridges the gaps between all of these different universes. Like, my favorite thing in the world, and Luke can attest to this, is when Daredevil Charlie Cox is there, and he's just there, and he's playing he's playing his character from Daredevil, playing Matt Murdock, and he's a lawyer, and he fucking catches the brick. Bro, that was the hypest shit ever, because anyone who knows me knows I fucking love Marvel's or Netflix's Daredevil.
I thought of you, and I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to tell Adam.
What's funny is you sent that text. You're like, I've been watching Hawkeye, and it's really good. Have you guys seen the Spider-Man movie yet? I reread that text, and I was like, oh, she really wants to talk about how Vincent D'Onofrio is in Hawkeye. Because this is... Spoilers, sorry.
Spoilers.
Well, that's all I'm going to say about it, because I haven't actually watched Hawkeye. That's all I know, is that Vincent D'Onofrio makes an appearance as reprising his role to some degree. Daredevil. So sorry if I spoiled that for anyone, but deal with it. Nerd. Yeah, you probably are already spoiled to that, so I apologize, but also I don't care. So, but yeah, no, like seeing, like, obviously, like, you know, seeing Charlie Cox, seeing Willem Dafoe reprise his role. Oh my God, I have so many things to say about Willem Dafoe. I have so many things to say about the Green Goblin, and seeing you know, all of these characters. Like, you know what's great about? I think my favorite thing overall. My two favorite things overall about this movie. The first favorite thing is that it not only, like, there's a lot of fan service, but it's not cheap. It's not just there for no reason. I mean, maybe the Daredevil thing might have been kind of there for no reason, but literally every other character who's included in this movie, including like the fan service characters, like the villains from the old series, from the old, you know, from Raimi's Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man series, and then also the Spider-Men from those respective series, they all have like little, like, they all have character moments that, like, even if I didn't really like them that much in their original movies, I think the only exception might be like Sandman and the Lizard, but like literally every other character they brought in from these other universes, like, I was so invested in what they were doing with them, and I actually think they kind of, especially for the Amazing Spider-Man stuff, I actually think they kind of gave some of those characters a better end than they ended up getting in their own movies. And with the Amazing Spider-Man, that might be because they had planned for a trilogy and they didn't get one, but it really felt like they tried to do them justice and give them closure in a way that I really didn't expect. And also not just like kind of like reference like, oh yeah, this happened in in my movie and this happened in my movie. It's like, no, there's actually like clearly character development that happened like off screen or after the series ended, like especially with Toby and with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Like, I love Andrew Garfield in this movie. I absolutely love him. I didn't love him in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I think his performance is good. I just kind of think it clashes somewhat with like my idea of the character. And that's actually a little unfair, I will say. Like, and Luke, maybe you can speak to this to some degree. I've been watching some, you know, video essays about people who know more about like the comic history of Spider-Man than I do, about the original runs and stuff. And apparently there's a lot more, like in the past I was like, oh, Tobey's is the most faithful to the comics, but I've kind of learned that might be maybe not as true as I initially thought, and that you know, maybe I had a wrong idea, I guess. But anyway, Luke, what were some things that I guess you liked and or appreciated about this movie?
Sure. Well, it definitely redeemed Andrew Garfield, which I didn't know he could pull off that kind of Spider-Man. I actually felt something when Zendaya, or whoever she's playing, fell off the Statue of Liberty. Right, MJ, Statue of Liberty, and he caught her and he cried. It was that was beautiful. He pulled that off well.
That hurt, bro.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to cry too.
I think I almost cried. I definitely shed tears. Like, I definitely had, like, you know, tearing up moments. I didn't like shed tears or like weep or anything, but I definitely teared up multiple times watching this movie. I will say that.
I may or may not have cried with Aunt May, but that's beside the point. What were we talking? Oh, right, Andrew Garfield. I totally forgot what I was saying. What was I saying?
You were tearing up about the scene with him and
okay. Oh, right. Okay, thank you. On a tribal note, I'm glad that it's firmly and finally established that Tobey Maguire could beat Andrew Garfield in the fight, because I've had a lot of arguments with people, and they've always said, Andrew Garfield, it's like, no, but now this movie proved it.
This movie proved that Tobey Maguire...
Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man could beat Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in a fight.
Are you talking about that little scene they had when they first saw each other in Ned's kitchen?
Like in the Westerns, yeah.
Oh, I love that bit.
Yeah,
I love that bit.
Good.
Unless old man Toby fucking cracks his back midway through a swing, and gets fucked.
Yeah.
My
first
back!
reaction to that scene
My
was that,
back!
But the biggest thing I liked in the movie was the performances. That's really the biggest. I already said Andrew Garfield. Alfred Molina was great. He's always great, but it was nice to see his Doc Ock in control for a bit. Good, I mean, longer than he was in Spider-Man 2. Marissa Tomei actually got something to do, which was nice. She's a great actress. And have you the one who's seen My Cousin Vinny?
yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, she won the Best Supporting Actress.
Yeah, I'm just name drop in case there's people out there who haven't seen it. Go see it. And I'm saving.
Who does she play in My Cousin Vinny? It's been so long since I've seen that movie.
She plays the guy's fiance.
Oh shit! I didn't even realize that until just now. Yeah, she's great. She's really good.
And of course, it was great to see Tobey Maguire. I mean, it was great. But Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe, though.
Willem Dafoe.
Dafoe, though.
Like you. Oh yeah, you both seen The Lighthouse.
Oh, of course.
That scene where he curses Robert Pattinson to the briny depths of the sea, and he was up to 11. That he was on 11 the whole movie, like he was in that scene in The Lighthouse, and it was great. And when he turned evil, when the Goblin reemerged, and he said to Tom Holland, "That's a neat sense you got there." It's like, oh, that line could have been so stupid if it was delivered by someone else, but because it was Willem Dafoe and the shadows were covering his face,
Nailed it.
I mean, there was one thing I hated about his what happened to him. Actually, several things, but do I say them, or are we doing that later?
That might be a good segue to get into gripes and complaints and things that you might not have liked. So yeah, Luke, why don't you go ahead and start? I think you have the most criticisms of this movie. So.
Oh, definitely. That's usually how it is.
That's okay.
All right, so I didn't like how he was redeemed in the end.
Yeah, I can agree with that to some degree.
All the other villains makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You need to be able to prove to your audience, just like especially children, that some people are irredeemable, and it's sad, but that's just how it is. It would be like at the end of Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader's redeemed, but then the Emperor all of a sudden gets redeemed because there's a cure or something. That's not how that works.
I never thought about that, but I completely agree.
Yeah, the end of Return of the Jedi shows, okay, there are really bad people out there, evil people, but they can change. And there are also evil people who will not change. Like if you look at history after World War II, there are Nazis who they escaped and they believed what they did was absolutely right. And then there are ex-Nazis who are like, oh shit, what we did was horrible. So those ones would be the Darth Vaders. Green Goblin should have been an emperor. And they ended his part with him saying, I've done something horrible, haven't I? It's like, oh, okay, whatever, you regular person who's going to go back to your universe and get stabbed, by the way. But
yeah, that is one of the kind of weird plot holes to this is that there is that sense of like I love the idea in this movie that instead of just like, oh, we're going to defeat these guys and we're going to send them back to where they came from. I love the idea is like, no, we're actually going to try to help them because that's what like, a good person does is they try to help people. And like, that does kind of feed into the theme of like with great power comes great responsibility. And it's more than just responsibility to help the innocent. You should also try to help people who you should just be trying to help people regardless of what they've done. That doesn't mean like enable them to do something evil, which is what kind of ends up happening in this movie. But right. There is a sense of like, you can't just give up on somebody because they've done something, bad. Like, it's like kind of the classic, the morality around like prison systems and I don't want to get too into that, but morality around like prison systems that I don't want to around.
Oh, okay.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but like around like prison systems and also like the death penalty and stuff. It's like, there's got to be a road to redemption to some degree. I think what I didn't like about the execution of that in this movie is, one, the fact that just because, like, I liked that I really loved that the goal is to help these characters, because they are, you know, they are people who we've seen their humanity in their own movies. So there's already an established bit of like, oh, you know what? A lot of these people like aren't bad to their core. They've just like, they've gone down like a bad road. And like, especially with like Doc Ock, that's like a great example of someone who had a lot of humanity, but was corrupted by, you know, his power and hubris. Right. And like even to some degree with, I actually liked what they did with Electro in this movie. I thought, you know, it kind of made him like less stupid. I mean,
Really?
Okay. I didn't like him in, I mean, from what I've seen of Amazing Spider-Man 2, I haven't seen the whole movie, but like in Amazing Spider-Man 2, correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, but I think he's just like, Spider-Man forgot my birthday, or like doesn't remember his name, and that's like what makes him, you know, turn into a villain or something. But I think the way they contextualized it in this movie is that like he is like, he considers himself like a nobody, like he considers himself like, you know, like someone who just fades into the background, and like this thing, this kind of like power, this energy is what allows him to be like special and like memorable to people.
Yes.
And I actually think like
that
contextualizing it in that way, in his little conversation with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man towards the end of the movie, I actually think like really was like, wow, that's a really good way of like taking a plot line that, at least from my perspective, seemed pretty like dumb and like kind of like comic, like not comic booky, and like it like kind of like hokey, like kind of like, well, that's a joke, and like kind of made it like, oh no, this is actually a little bit kind of resonant, and I kind of like what they did with it here. It kind of made that character retroactively cooler and like more interesting, in my opinion. But maybe
They also made it cooler by not actually having any prosthetics or glasses. You notice that? They mention in the story, they mention it like, oh, what happened to your glasses and you look different. But they didn't actually answer that question, which I thought was kind of interesting. Unless I missed something.
Did he?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. Did he have the glasses after he got shocked by the electric eels in the Spider-Man 2?
No, because he was in Electro form that whole time, so you never see him back in his original form, like as with the nerdy glasses, and he had like fake teeth on. And in No Way Home, he doesn't have any of that once he's in his like human form, in his whole like form. And so Lizard brings it up, like what happened, and but Electro, Max Steel never actually answers that question, and I was a little bit. I watched it twice, and I looked out for it both times. Well, and he doesn't answer the question.
Maybe he himself doesn't know, but I will say, like, his design in this movie, like just like the character design in general, I find to be much better, because I did not like the way he looked in that movie. Like,
I loved the other design.
I hate the weird blue looking like a fucking like marble man. You know.
Look, I know I'm in the minority, but.
Yeah, I agree with that. You're right. He does look better in No Way.
I think so.
I always felt that if they put Electro on screen, they'd have to go with the ultimate route and not the amazing route. And his ultimate costume is essentially that, the blue thing with black whatever. I think it's more appealing to the eye. It's a bit more grounded. But the fact that he had dark tech in this, which annoyed me immensely. But because not everything in the world should revolve around Tony Stark. As much as I love him,
they didn't bring him up that much, though. Like, I
think,
but
he was the reason Electro's costume was different.
The arc reactor.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. But like, what I will say is that this movie, I think more than any of the others, kind of sold Spider-Man to me as like his own, like Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I mean, as like his own man, and not like kind of playing like second fiddle to like Tony. And there's a lot of reasons for that I'll get into later. But like, I think in the main way is that like obviously he has Stark tech, but like he's doing like his own scientific like research and like solving the problems for these like, you know, freaks that he brought to Happy's apartment. You know, on his own.
Solve all that. We've never seen him that he's a super genius. That was weird.
I accept it because the character has been portrayed as being really smart, and he's all like in the second movie in Far From Home, he does kind of like redesign his own suit with its own specs, and he like knew how to use the tech and stuff. So I'm actually fine with that.
Yeah,
I'm actually fine, and I actually like that moment in this movie better than I did in the last ones, because not only is like I like that in this movie. Okay, I just got to say this because one of my favorite things in this movie is that they completely, by the end of the movie, he has no resources anymore. He has no Stark shit. It's just but like they slowly strip the Starkness from him throughout the movie, and like first by like he has the fucking like Stark like 3D printer that he opens up and starts 3D printing shit to help everybody. But then that gets blown up when the Green Goblin does his crazy coup and like, tries to, kill everybody. And then by the time he meets with the other Spider-Men, they are like working together in like just like a lab. Like they're just like, oh yeah, we're just in a lab and we're doing things together just like without any like super like futuristic tech. We're just doing it like with our own knowledge and the resources available to us. And then by the end of the movie, he's completely without Stark tech. He has his own homemade suit like the other Spider-Man. And I'm just like, and he does, Happy doesn't know he exists. So it's like, hell yeah, this is the starting point for like adults Peter, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, which all of that is, while it's great and I love it, that's probably my favorite thing about the movie. It raises a lot of questions that will never be answered. So
go into that.
All right. So he got his own apartment. That raises all like the technicalities of different things. I know you don't have to. Sometimes you don't have to show this for an apartment, but does he not exist? According to the government, like his social security number. If nobody knows he exists,
I think the full parameters of Spider-Man or Peter Parker's Spider-Man being forgotten has been set yet. I think we can probably understand that.
I mean,
whatever next film. But you're right. The little details.
Hope so. I mean, at the same time, I just kind of want them to gloss over it because I hate all this crossover stuff. And I know I'm in the minority again, but it's like because one of the things you were both saying about the Raimi trilogy is very character driven and it's personal. The stakes are human, and none of these movies are. It's why I love the first Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, because it's very character driven. There's virtually no reference to anything else.
I mean,
and
I completely disagree with the saying that other Marvel movies aren't character driven, and especially I disagree with the assertion that the Tom Holland trilogy hasn't been character driven. If that's what you're saying, I vehemently disagree, and I will fight you. IRL in the street right now.
Even the Andrew Garfield movies are more character driven than Tom Holland movies.
Okay, tell me why you think that.
Honestly, it comes down to the fact that we're following one person's journey in both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Tom Holland, it's whenever we see him, and it's been brought up by you that it's no longer, oh, Mr. Stark, can I do this? Blah, blah, blah. He's his own guy. But I just had a brain fart. I know you're not supposed to do that on podcast, but I had a brain fart.
It's okay. Get some water. But yeah, so no. No. I'm just like looking out for you. I hope. But so here's why I disagree with that. So yes, it's a different type of story, and because it's part of like a larger ensemble universe, things do get taken away because of that. Him having like access to tech that he wouldn't otherwise have and resources that he wouldn't otherwise have does take away from Spider-Man being kind of like someone who, pulls himself up by his bootstraps a little bit. I do agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think that's part of the problem that you're expressing with this character in this trilogy. However, I do still find his trilogy to be extremely character-driven, and I actually like his relationship with Stark throughout them, and like just like his relationship to the wider world as well. And I'll explain why real quick. I'm not going to be super long-winded about this, but just so you have like my perspective. The first movie, I can't remember it. Homecoming. Yes.
Homecoming.
I was about to say something else.
What were you gonna say?
I don't know, Home on the Range or some shit. But
Oh yeah, that'll be the 10th one when it goes to the West.
I'm really hoping that they drop the home motif and then whatever they do next with this character, because I'm over it. It was cute.
They said they're dropping it. Yeah,
It was cute, but I'm
Well,
over
I've got something to say about that, but Adam, you go ahead.
Okay. Well, no. Go ahead and say it before I get into my little spiel.
Well, I mean, the home thing is like a theme. I think the whole trilogy is basically the origin story.
Oh yeah.
But we always all wondered, like, oh, why didn't they get like an original like origin like story like the other two got, you know? But it was already done, and you could argue that, right? But no, this whole thing was basically a origin story,
Yeah.
which can explain why, as you watch the three films, you watch Peter Parker become like a little boy dependent on Tony Stark, become less and less dependent by the end.
Yes.
He's come full circle and he is his own.
Yes.
Which you see right at the very end, with that very visually beautiful scene where he's in his homemade suit in the snow. Oh,
Yeah.
My jaw dropped when I saw that.
Oh,
that was so beautiful.
It was so good. And like I couldn't agree more, Natalie. And Luke, that's basically exactly what I was going to say. Is that like this, like in the other Spider-Man movies, you could argue that maybe Spider-Man 1, like for me, like I would even argue that Spider-Man 1, like the amount of ground it covers, like in terms of like the origin of the character, is like that's like designated to kind of like the first like 30 minutes of the movie, maybe like 45 minutes or something. I mean, I guess you could even make the argument that maybe the first movie is sort of the origin, because by the end he reaffirms his uncle's mantra that like with great power comes great responsibility, and he like walks away from Mary Jane, and that's obviously like a big choice that kind of defines his character going forward. So if you want to say that they dedicated one movie to Peter Parker's origin in the Raimi series, you can. However, I think this is a trilogy of origin stories for this character, and you can argue, well, did they really need a trilogy? Then there's a good argument to say maybe they didn't, but I actually, for me, emotionally and like in terms of like emotional resonance, when it comes full circle in like how much like this really is the origin story for Peter Parker when Aunt May, spoilers, dies or gets killed by the Green Goblin, and like clearly Aunt May is like the fact that we've spent, like, obviously she wasn't a huge character in the earlier movies, but like her being such like a presence throughout those movies, and then also like her in this movie being kind of like Peter's moral conscience, and like I actually like going back to the previous movies, like, you know, realizing like, oh yeah, she has been kind of like working in like sort of a humanitarian role to some degree in the past. I had a problem with that. Go for it.
I loved the fact that was her role in this movie, but I felt if they really wanted to do her death justice and give her character depth in the last two, they should have shown. Well, they showed it a little bit in the second one, but especially in the first one, we should have seen. Oh, you work or have started this foundation feast. Let's see you be more than just a hot mom. She was in the first one.
I can agree to some degree that it was more about, like, I think I see what you're saying in the sense that it wasn't really focused on, but I think each movie has kind of its own focus. And going back to what I was saying before, the first movie, like you explained, Natalie, is he's basically just a kid and he's asking for permission from Tony Stark. He's like, can I go on a big boy mission now? And Tony's like, no, we'll call you when we need you. Just like do your neighborhood cleanup thing. And he's just kind of like a local hero. And by the end of that movie, he's like, yeah, being a local hero is cool. And like, I actually, I want to continue to do that. And like at the end of that movie, he has like his toys taken away, and he still but he still knows that like he, is responsible. He has the ability to do something. He has to do it. He goes and stops the Vulture in his shitty suit that looks like shit, and it's great. It's a great moment. In the second movie, it's about like, it kind of does sort of mirror the Raimi trilogy in a little bit, in that he's like, being Spider-Man keeps me from doing the things that I want, and I want to like, get a girlfriend in Paris, and like, and but like, and he basically gives his powers away. He gives Tony's tech to someone else when it was entrusted to him, and like then he kind of, you know, there is like a sense of like him wanting to relinquish the responsibility because it would be easier for him in his life if he did so, but it would cause harm to more people. It would cause harm to everyone else. So by the end of the movie, he he kind of comes around to it and learns to accept the responsibility, accept in the second movie, it's all about the weight that's put on his shoulders now that Tony is gone. Like in the beginning of the movie, they interview him. They're like, "Oh, are you going to be like the new Tony Stark now?" And he's like, "Oh God, I fucking hate. I just want to be a kid. I was blipped away and I just came back and I just want to, kiss a cute girl and like, And I like that by the end of the movie, he's like, no, like someone needs to kind of step into this role that Tony left, because regardless of how you feel about Tony Stark, he was clearly like, someone that people in this universe look to for, to help and like kind of make the world a better place and stuff. So him kind of accepting, relinquishing the responsibility when it's making his life hell, and then, coming around to embrace it, is, I think, a good arc for the character. And I think it all kind of culminates in this movie where, like, we still see him make stupid mistakes and we still see him, be like a kid. But by the end of it, he really is like, he has to take responsibility for his actions. He got a wizard involved in his personal life drama and it caused the whole world to get fucked up. And he, in order to save the world, it almost did anyway, in order to save the fabric of reality, he had to accept the responsibility, which was giving up like all the things he wanted the most. And it's basically like a clean slate. And like, man, like I will say this, like Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3 especially, the Raimi trilogy, like really get me in the feels in a lot of ways. And that's part of the reason why I go to bat for the Raimi trilogy, because I do think they are successful, and at very least the emotional beats of what they're trying to accomplish with their character arcs and stuff like that, even if there are some weird, stuff in there along the way. But with this movie, this is like the first time I've like felt that same level of like emotional resonance, and like just kind of like I feel like they were firing on all cylinders in this one, and it just really, really blew me away. But anyway, I've been talking for too long.
No, but you bring up some good points.
Yeah. But yeah. Oh man, where do we go from here? I just
want to correct something, or at least clarify something I said. I don't hate Tony Stark, or at least movie Tony Stark or movie Iron Man. Mm. In the comics, he can die. But I get what you're saying. I don't hate him. I just don't like I'm more of a standalone guy than a connectivity. When it comes to movies,
that's fair. You appreciate different things and like for me, like I always try to, like, even if I don't like something as much, I always try to kind of like understand like what they were going for. And I think like there's an arc there, and I think it's good. It's just like maybe isn't as resonant with you, and that makes sense.
Yeah. And you brought up Doctor Strange. Really, everything falls on him. The whole movie is his fault.
Yeah, what the fuck, Doctor Strange? You really fucked up.
I have something to say about that.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead. If you want to finish your point, go ahead.
Oh, sure. It's like, okay, you're a 40-something-year-old guy, a guy who's about to graduate high school comes to you, says, hey, can you make everyone forget who I am? And Doctor Strange should have said, okay, that's a really, difficult and morally complex spell, so let's talk about it for a while. And then once they come to an agreement, okay, we'll make everyone forget. Who do you want to remember should have been the first question. And I know everyone's saying...
Yeah.
But, like,
that
okay.
That scene with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man was out of character for Doctor Strange. Starting with his very hasty decision in granting Spider-Man to cast a spell and going along with it, and then basically, agreeing to every whim of Peter Parker asking to change a spell. The whole thing was off to me. So I don't know if it has to do with already character development in the works for the next Doctor Strange film.
Well, yeah, I think that's what they implied.
Yes, that's probably the implied, but I couldn't quite tell if it was that or if it was just like an oversight in writing, because it just that is not Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is very careful about those sorts of things. At least I thought it was very hasty and just I was like, wow, that doesn't seem like him at all.
That's true.
Yeah, like I get that he kind of like I mean I will say this, and you might disagree with this, Luke, but I kind of like that they sort of established a little bit of a relationship between Strange and Peter in Infinity War. Like I like that kind of comes back in that like maybe Strange feels like he owes him a favor because the kid was helpful around that time or whatever. I don't know. Like they both know a dead guy named Tony Stark, I guess. Maybe that's all it is. Who knows? I like their chemistry in this movie. Like I think like I like their relationship, and I think it's cool to pair Peter with like an older, wiser character, sort of. Even though clearly Doctor Strange, and I loved the fight they had in that like alternate dimension. Oh my god, one of the coolest fight scenes in like any movie I've ever seen. So fucking cool. Holy shit. That was so wild. But like anyway, like I love that fight because it's more than just like, oh, like, yeah, of course the fans want to see Peter Parker fight other like heroes because that's always cool when it happens, and like seeing him fight a wizard is fucking so sick. But what I love about that scene is it's not just like a fan service like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if these two characters fought each other? It's like, no, it's more than that. It's like these two are diametrically opposed. Like Dr. Fate's like, listen, dude, we have a
Doctor Strange, Dr. Fate is DC.
Yes. Well, I got the reason I got it mixed up is he literally says, Doctor Strange says, we have to send them back. Even if they die, it is their fate. And Peter's like, but what if we could change their fate? And like, you know, and like Peter's obviously like carrying the weight of like, with great power comes great responsibility. If I have the power to save these people, you know, I have the responsibility to do that as well. And Doctor Strange is like, well, I have, you know, a responsibility to keep the fabric of reality together, and I don't know if you can pull this off. I have no reason to believe that you can. So, like, I just, like, both points of view were really understandable, but I like that it comes to a head in, like, a battle. And obviously neither of them are, like, trying to hurt each other. It's just like, okay, well, one of us is going to get what we want and the other one isn't. And I love that Peter wins that fight by being like just more clever. He's just like, oh wait, I understand, you know, fucking geometry. Let me use my powers in a really creative way and trap you. That was fucking awesome. Oh my god, that was so cool.
He's just wit, his smarts, yeah. That part though with Doctor Strange, oh my gosh, I forgot the term now. You know, when that out of body.
Astral projection.
Yeah. Thank you. So when that happens, do you remember that part? I thought that was very important. And when he was out of his body and he still couldn't get the box, and Doctor Strange makes the comment, "This shouldn't be happening." Do you both remember that?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think there was two reasons they could have been doing that.
Well, I know the reason, but. Do you want me to tell you, or do you want to say what your thoughts with this?
It was either spider sense or it's setting up Moreland.
It's not the spider sense, but I realized after I started watching the What If series. Have you two watched the What If series anthology on Disney Plus yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay, it's actually amazing. You should watch it. I watched the Doctor Strange episode. And that Doctor Strange episode explains that very small scene where he couldn't get the box out of his hand. It's because, and this actually has to do with the character development for Tom Holland's Spiderman and coming full circle, which we were talking about earlier. It's literally a thing in the MCU. There is an absolute point in everyone's life. And the absolute point in this storyline for Tom Holland's Spider-Man was for everything that happened to happen. So the idea that he couldn't get the box so he could send all the villains from the other worlds back, from the other universes back, was because they were supposed to stay. An absolute point is where, like, there's a point in all our lives where we can't change. It has to happen. No magic can change it. But if you do change it, it sort of wrecks the balance of the universes. It's a no-go. You shouldn't change it. This episode of What If with Doctor Strange that explains this. It's a really good episode. Please go watch it soon, because I would love to talk about that as well.
Oh.
But it was really cool. I watched this after I watched No Way Home, and I'm connected the dots, and I was like, oh, so that was Tom Holland's Spider-Man's absolute point. Everything in the film had to happen the way Aunt May had to die, and he had to go through this like metamorphosis to become the adult that he became in the end. Yeah, so all of that had to happen, and that's why he couldn't get the box. Isn't that cool? I love that little bit.
That's a really interesting, I want to say theory, but you're talking about it as if it's 100% true. So I'm going to say that's an interesting explanation. I'm not even going to call it a theory.
Go watch the episode, and we'll talk.
Okay. I think that could be right. I think that could be right.
No, you could be right. I just still hope the Moreland thing is true, because that would be cool.
The Moreland thing is where Spider-Man gets...
your absolute point in your life.
Yeah, Moreland is Spider-Man's Doomsday or Bane.
Oh, right. Yeah. That would be awesome. And honestly, yeah. I could see them doing something. I could see them introducing that character in the way that this series has progressed.
Yeah, I think the next trilogy we're going to get like Hobgoblin, Kingpin, Black Cat, Moreland. I hope.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like honestly, like one of the reasons I really like this movie is it ends on such a clean slate. Like, and let me just explain that. Like, I think the overarching story of this trilogy is about like slowly like losing everything that like made Peter who he felt he was, kind of like he lost his in the first movie he like lost his like kind of support from Tony, and then in the second movie he, like, even though it's been some time since then, he no longer has that support, and he no longer has like a person he can just call for backup. Like, he has to solve the problem on his own. He loses that mentor figure. And then in the third movie, he loses not only Aunt May, who like instilled his values in him, not only his friends, but like his entire identity. Like, everything that made him who he was is essentially shed by the time he leaves high school. And for me, that was like such a resonant thing, because like I've, like, both when I like kind of graduated high school and graduated college, like I kind of, on a microcosm, I can kind of like relate to that feeling at least a little bit, in the sense that like, you like leave high school and like people move their separate ways, and you never, a lot of those people you never see again, even if like you did have like some sort of like friendship or relationship with them. And then like with, college, it's like, a lot of people like moved away, or like, you have like fallings out with people, and like, and it's like, in that moment where he went to the diner, or wherever MJ worked, and he sees his friends, and he promised them like, I'm going to come find you. But he sees them, and he sees that like, he talks to MJ, and he sees like, and she's like, he sees the scar on her, or like the cut on her forehead, and she has like a bandage over it, and he's like, does that still hurt? And she's like, a little bit, but it's healing. And he makes the decision not to remind them of who he was to them, because in his mind at least, it's better. They're better off. They won't get hurt if he's not a part of their lives anymore. Like, he feels like,
no, he did the right thing.
It's arguable, but I really like, as someone who's had to do similar things, where it's like, someone, maybe in like a past relationship is better off without you. Like, you're just, it's like, it's not a compatible thing, but like you want to, you want to call him so bad, but it's just like, that it would be, that it would be wrong. Like, this wouldn't work out. This isn't like a good thing. And you have to walk away, and like that's always like a really, at least in my experience, that's a really tough thing to do. And like, you know, just like walking away from kind of, you know, friends and relationships, like when you kind of you don't want to, like it's the safety net, but like leaving it, you know, is like the right thing, even if it's going to be harder, and like really lonely. And like I related to that moment of like him kind of like not really having anyone anymore and walking away from it, and like kind of just being content with just comforting those people in his own way, or just like getting a little bit of closure in his own way and just starting anew. Is just like, I've been through similar things, and that like made me cry. I was like straight up like, oh God, I feel this on such a deep level. So
I think it's going to end up proving to be both good and bad if they continue with MJ and Ned. It'll be good for MJ because she almost died falling off the the Statue of Liberty. But there was a lot of hints in the movie that Ned's going to be the Hobgoblin.
Yeah.
So
I'll say this, like I like Zendaya in these movies, and I liked her a lot in this movie. I think this was her best performance in this trilogy yet.
Definitely.
But I also kind of really hope she doesn't come back, because I want them to fucking sell that there were consequences to this shit, and I want them to fucking sell the choice that he had to make. And if they just go back on it and she like remembers later or some shit, like Ned is one thing because they've set up an antagonistic relationship potentially being something that could occur between him and Peter later on, and that could be really interesting, especially if Peter remembers him and Ned does not. Like I think that could actually be really tragic and good. But like,
Ned being a wizard,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, Ned is the, I don't know if you're aware of this, Natalie, but as Luke said, Ned's name is the name of like one instance of the Hobgoblin in the comics.
I did read up about that actually. Him being his friend and all, and you know the little like conversation with Tobey Maguire's Peter saying that his best friend turned against him.
That too, yeah, that too. So there's a little bit of foreshadowing. They could do something with that.
Yeah.
Also, he's magic, which the Hobgoblin isn't, but he's magic. The weapons in the grandma's house. A lot of stuff. There's
a lot of little things, yeah, that tease it at least. But yeah, and I think also in the original, or one of the original comic runs of Spider-Man, like him leaving high school, because like there was obviously the high school storylines, but they moved beyond that. And I think at the time it was like the love interests were like Liz and Betty Brant and stuff, but like when he left, he just kind of like, he had like basically a falling out with everyone, and just basically like kind of moved off on his own, and like met like new character, or like, you know, connected with new characters in like in college, and like, you know, in his life as an adult and stuff. So it actually, like, this is a really, like, I think much more true to like the origins of the character than I think a lot of people maybe give it credit for. It's really, really, really interesting. And I haven't read a lot of those particular comics that I'm referencing, but there's a lot of good people online who've, you know, have a lot of interesting like videos and kind of recaps of that stuff that I've been consuming since watching this movie, and it kind of colors, you know, what I think they're going for with this in an interesting way. And yeah, I loved it, because like for me that was something that was so resonant with me. It's just like having to like walk away from something that you want just because you know it's not the best thing for the other person, you know, for the other people involved. Yeah, it was really selfless and like really powerful and like really melancholy. Like holy shit, like when they ended the movie like that, I was like, this is how it ends? Like I was blown away, because I never thought Marvel would have the balls to like end a movie like that.
Well, you know, they're probably gonna undo it.
Oh, don't remind me. I want to just bask in it being good.
The only thing they're never gonna undo is Iron Man's death.
That's good, and that's one of the reasons why I really like Endgame. But we don't need to go into that right now, because I know you and I have contended on that in the past. But
I mean, that's like the Marvel formula. Like, there's always like a happy ending, or there's a happy ending but with consequences or issues at the end.
Right, but then those consequences or issues just lead to a happy ending.
I mean, not always. Yes. Like the Thor Ragnarok ending kind of was like bittersweet, but then like literally the beginning of Infinity War is like, oh, all those characters we just got to know, yeah, they're dead. They're all dead now. Or like most of them are anyway. So
except Infinity War, but we know that was really like a part 1 of 2.
That was an Empire Strikes Back type of movie, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, something you said earlier, Luke, about Green Goblin should not have been cured. I thought that would have been brilliant. I never thought about that until you mentioned it like today. But if they had that, it would have been too much of an imbalance with the formula that they normally have. Do you know what I mean? So they have a happy ending, but there's an issue. For here, there's a happy ending, but everybody forgets he's Spider-Man. Everyone.
Well, everyone just forgets him.
Yeah.
Yes, everyone forgets that he's Spider-Man. Yeah.
I mean, well, I definitely contend that he should have been cured. Shouldn't have been cured, and
I think that would have been brilliant.
Right, and I have that problem that it's like, oh, it would throw off the balance. There shouldn't be a balance. Do something brave.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a case of like creative writing versus writing for the
Marvel.
type of movie you know what I mean?
It's a downside to the Marvel stuff for sure.
I think it is a bit of a downside. That would have been brilliant because that would have been like, hey kids, you know, this is the world. There's a balance of good and evil. Or hey kids, like mental health is a real thing, and we can't always just fix it with a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say, I like that. In that scene with the Green Goblin at the end, I like that Peter Holland. I like that Peter Holland didn't end up killing the Green Goblin. He beat him. He was about to kill him, and I like that it was in particular. Oh God, I'm forgetting his name.
Peter Maguire.
Toby, yes.
That was Toby's
Peter Maguire coming in to stop him from doing so because he was responsible for the death of the man who he thought killed his uncle, and that has been something that has clearly in this movie they touch on that and show that like it didn't make me feel better. It was like, you know, a life for a life isn't the right way. Him trying to stop Tom from making the same mistake was really great. And if I could change anything about that ending encounter between those characters, it would be that Green Goblin stabs Tobey Maguire Parker. Tobey Maguire Parker, instead of just being like, oh yeah, I've been stabbed 1,000,000 times before, no problem, dude, I wish he had died. I wish he had died.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Like, and I love Toby, and this doesn't come from a place of not liking him. I think it would have been a better story and just more resonant as a story if there was that consequence. Sometimes making the right choice leads to bad outcomes, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't make the right choice. And
I hate that I agree with you, and you know how much I love him, but that would have been the better way to handle it. Yeah.
His story.
I thought he was gonna die. It seemed like a bad wound.
Yeah, the fact that he's just like, ow, and then Andrew Garfield's like, wow, you're in a lot of pain, huh? And he's like, yep. Like, I was like, oh, that sucks. Like, that was one of the times I like audibly groaned in the theater. I was like, man, what the fuck? Like, you guys are doing so well, and then you'd pull some shit like that. That's bullshit. And especially because
it's Marvel.
Especially because Tobey Maguire specifically, that guy's had a full trilogy of movies. His time as that character, it's already like them resurrecting him for this. Like, I'm glad he got like some good character moments. I like his moment with Doc Ock where he because like clearly it sounds like him and MJ are separated, like they're no longer like
they're still together.
That's not what they make it sound like.
Debatable.
They said
it sounds like they're at least not living together at very least. Like they have like
he said it took a while, and there's some complications, it's complicated, but we eventually made it work.
He said we made it work, not we're making it work.
Yeah, we made it work, past tense. So, I know. Honestly, if my guess would be that like they have a kid and like they're separated, but they're like on decent terms and they like have shared custody. That's my headcanon for what's going on with that. Because I like
very detailed. Very detailed.
I mean, yeah, it's that's like my head because
Name of the kid, Adam.
to me that's more satisfying because like like those two were super toxic. Like I love those characters. I love MJ and the Raimi series, and I love Peter from the Raimi series. But they were like a super toxic couple. I'm like, yeah, and it was based on like, oh, girl next door, like first crush type of shit, and like obviously there was more to it that came from that, obviously, and I do think they truly loved each other. But there was some toxic elements to that relationship. I like that they forgive each other and reconcile at the end of 3, but in the long run, I just didn't see that working out forever. I think even in the script for 4, it wasn't. They were for the 4th movie they were going to make in the Raimi series, they didn't have it working out. So that's
Orchard Love.
That's my opinion on that. Like I never saw that shit was toxic.
I read one of the drafts for 4, and do you want to know what happens?
I think you've already told me.
I didn't think you told me.
Go for it.
All right. Well, one of the drafts, it turns out Mary Jane is the. Okay, yeah, this is. Okay, they do split.
Spoilers?
Spoilers for a movie that'll never be made. They do split up. Black Cat is briefly his love interest. He retires. He tells Black Cat to defend the city, and his mask is on the ground, and that's the final shot of the movie. It's really depressing.
Yeah, I mean, without a 5th movie, that is a bad ending. Let's just say that. If they were planning a 5th movie after that, that's okay, because that's like kind of like the dark timeline when he can come back and redeem himself. But as a final movie, that would be really bad. That being said, I like my little dumb headcanon, and the reason I think it works is that it's all about responsibility with that Peter Parker, and I like that, like, despite the relationship not working out, them having like a kid together that maybe they have shared custody over, like he's like, I'm trying to be like a good dad, and like in this movie he felt like sort of the dad of the Parker trio. He's like, I have. He felt like like the most realized of the 3, because we've seen him the most of all 3 of them in the movies that they've had. So it feels like that maybe just diegetically, but it also feels like that from their presentation of the character in No Way Home. And I like his moment where he's talking to Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus, where Doc Ock is like, how you doing, man? Like, I mean, it was kind of a funny scene because they've been antagonistic for a while, but he's like, yeah, Peter, how you doing? And he's like, and he says again what Doc said to him in Spider-Man 2. He's like, I'm trying to do better. And like that gave me a big old smile. Like to me, that was the end of his arc, and him like doing the thing where he held back Tom from killing Willem Dafoe.
Electro. No, he didn't hold him back from killing Electro.
No, it was Willem Dafoe.
Doc Ock. Oh, you're talking about Willem Dafoe. Okay.
No, I'm talking about the scene where Toby, yes, holds off Holland from killing Dafoe, and I think it would have been resonant had Toby been killed, because he's already a completely fully realized character, even with like the things that have happened since Spider-Man 3 that we didn't get to see. I still like that, like his little thing with Alfred Molina being like, I'm trying to do better. Like to me, that would have been like him ending with like a death. I think would have been good. I think that would have been good. Anyway,
but this is ultimately a Disney movie. You can't do that.
But it's not in other ways though. Like, okay, can we talk about Aunt May's death for a sec?
Okay.
Like, okay, how did you guys react to that? Like, did it hit you?
Cried.
I cried.
I had one of the tears come out.
We all cried. Okay. I mean, it was effective as fuck, right? It was super effective.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you specifically why I cried. Did I tell you, Adam?
I don't know. Can you tell me again?
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah.
You had a crush on her, and then.
Well, everyone has a crush on Marissa Tomei.
I mean, I don't, but I like her though. She's cool.
Yeah, you like her. Anyway, something she said with the villains in the beginning, it reminded me of my mom. Something my mom would say. And then when Spider-Man ultimately chooses to go on what Aunt May said against Doctor Strange, it's like, oh, yeah, I'd do that. Because philosophically, I like to think I'd agree with Doctor Strange, but at the last second, I'd definitely do what Spider-Man did. And as a result, I'd end up getting my mom killed.
Yeah. It's easy to relate to, especially if you put it like that, Luke, and like especially with your particular connection that you have between your mom and this character. And I think it was just really well done, because like I definitely, like, as much as I love the Uncle Ben from the Raimi trilogy, like when he dies, like I didn't cry, because like we didn't really get to, like, I feel like I was more attached to him in the second movie where he came back in that flashback and Peter was like, I'm Spider-Man no more, like, or like, I'm not going to live your dreams anymore. Like, to me that was the more resonant Uncle Ben scene in that Raimi trilogy for me, and that's just for me. That's
scene, yeah.
And like, I didn't cry when we saw Uncle Ben died back then, because it was like, I was a little kid. I guess maybe I just didn't fully understand it. But even as an adult, I'm like, I know this is going to happen. It's not like a surprise. Like, and I'm not like super attached to the characters because we haven't known them very long. But like with this Marissa Tomei, Aunt May, like we actually have kind of gotten to know her. And like, obviously she doesn't get a lot of time in the movies before this, but like I like her, and I really liked her in the first half of this movie, like in the first 2/3 of this movie. Like, she really, her being kind of like Peter's moral compass and like kind of taking him to task. Like, listen, you can't just send them back to die. Like, you have to, like, it's your responsibility to help because you can. Like, you have all this Stark tech. You have, you're friends with a fucking wizard. You can help.
Yeah.
You have these superpowers. You can help. So you are obligated to do so. And like that was, and like when she kind of reiterates that before, and like when, oh man, just the scene, the way they fucking lingered on that death scene, like, God, like, holy shit.
That killed me. And then
Holland knocked it out of the fucking park, man. Holland knocked it out of the park.
And then they followed it up with the J. Jonah Jameson thing in Times Square. It was.
Yeah. Just the way she was like, I'm just gonna lie down for a sec. I just need to take a sec, And then oh God, dude, that was fucking rough, man. That was rough. That was Jesus. I will say, I think the one of the things, I think at least I think probably both of you would agree with me on, at least Luke, I think you would, is that like in terms of like cinematography, I haven't been very impressed with the Holland trilogy very much, but this movie had, I think, much better like shot composition than the previous two. Like, compare, because like even the Andrew Garfield movies have like great shot composition. At least the first one did. I can't really speak for the second one very much, but the first one had some really amazing like just like angles and like the things that like the different sequences they were able to do. And just like, I love that like POV shot where like he's like swinging through the air and he jumps and you see his reflection in the building. Like, there's so many really good like memorable shots in Spider-Man movies. Yeah. And I feel like the first two Holland movies didn't really have very good ones. It was very just like generic like action framing with like wide shots, and then we get a slightly closer up shot. But like they never did it. In this movie they had like some, that shot where he like kind of has his spider sense and he's like walking into the room slowly trying to figure out what's causing that spider sense. Yeah. And then you finally like that was so fucking tense, because the whole time, like, what is fucking happening? It was great. Like,
and Aunt May just like sort of stepping. Yeah, that was a really good scene actually. If you're going to talk about cinematography, we're going to talk about the that shot with the 3 Spider-Men swinging and landing around the Statue of Liberty.
Very cool. That was fun.
Oh my God, I screamed.
Yeah.
Just me by myself in the theater.
Can we collectively just have, because we've been like kind of talking about criticisms and I think a lot of them are valid, but like I kind of want to just take a second and gush, just like from a non-critical perspective, just talk about these 3 boys in the same movie together. So cool, man, right?
I know.
Can we just talk about it for a second? We got to live to see this.
I love the little reference to the meme that they had in the lab.
Yeah, they did that twice. That was cool.
Pointing at each other.
I think I was in the bathroom when that was happening, but
seriously?
Yeah, you were.
All right, we got to get you to see that scene, but they did it so subtly. It was so subtle, that part where they point to each other. When Ned goes Peter, and they all go, what? Me? And they were all like pointing to each other.
They also did it at the statue, so I guess he saw it.
Yes, they did it on the stack. They did it twice, but it was very subtle. I like that they did it that way, because there is a lot of fan service, as we said before, and this was part of the fan service, but they didn't overdo it, or without it being like kissing ass over here. know what I mean?
Yeah, well, because it wasn't just fan service. Like, yes, there was, on paper, if you write, okay, we're going to have a movie where Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield appear in the latest Spider-Man movie starring Tom Holland. On paper, that is like the most fan service of any movie ever made, basically, right? But
pretty much.
It's all saved by the execution. Like, that's really what does it here. And like the way they executed on these characters, oh, chef's kiss, baby. Like, so fucking good. Like, I love that in Peter Parker's lowest moment, he just lost his aunt. He's just got his ass kicked. All these guys he was trying to help just backstabbed his ass. And like, who comes to, and at this point, like, who can relate to him? Like, you know, like, who can relate to being in this situation? He doesn't have, like, you know, Tony Stark's not there anymore. Like, his superhero friends are just not around, and like, all he has is his friends, but like, and they're there for him, but like, they can't necessarily relate to what he's going through. And in comes the two people who can relate to him the most in the entire fucking universe, my boy Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, to kind of talk him off of that ledge.
That shot was good too. When they came in, you saw their shadows from the top.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
that was really cool.
I really liked that Tobey was in street clothes, and that was funny.
Yeah.
You mean a cool youth pastor, not?
Yeah.
Yeah. And God, can we just take a second to gush about Andrew Garfield for a minute? Like, maybe I'm alone in this, but like, I don't like. I think actually, like, I know a lot of shit gets talked about the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I actually like Amazing Spider-Man 1. I don't love it. Like, I don't like it as much as I love the Raimi trilogy, but I do, like, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that was enjoyable. And even when I go back to it, I'm like, yeah, this is still good. Like, it doesn't, there's elements about it I don't like, but overall I enjoy it. I haven't seen the full second movie. What I've seen I don't particularly like, but I really, really loved him in this film. I think what they did with, like, kind of expanding on his story and filling in, like, what's happened to him and what he's been dealing with since the ending of the second movie was just, like, so thoughtful. And, like, I actually enjoyed, controversial take incoming, I enjoyed him more than Tobey in this movie. Just gonna say it. I never thought in a million years I would ever fucking say that, but they just gave him such, like, good moments, and he like, his acting was on point. He was hilarious, and just every emotional moment they gave him, he knocked it out of the park, and I believed it because we had the basis for it. Like, he, you know, him talking about not being able to save Gwen, and like how that turned him into, like, a violent person. He's like, yeah, eventually I just got jaded, and I kind of lost, like, what I was fighting for, and I stopped holding back. I started letting my hands go, and he's like, I don't want to see that happen to you, Peter Holland. That was just really resonant, and I love that, like, he actually got, like, more development than, and like, he got closure. That's all I ever wanted for the character. I'm just so happy.
I don't disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that one scene that he had when he did save MJ, like, that was probably the best scene.
I teared up.
Like, between the scenes, like, if you're going to compare Tobey and Andrew's scenes,
mm-hmm.
like, that was, like, such an iconic scene in that movie because, like, boom, there was such closure and such an amazing connection to, you know, his big experience, what he had in his last film.
Oh, man.
But, I mean, I don't know if it was better than Tobey's. Like, he had the better scene, but Tobey's overall was, you know, I thought that was a pretty good story arc that his character had. He was like the big brother.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Tobey's was worse. I'm just saying I personally, like, liked Andrew Garfield in this movie more because I liked his role more. Tobey, like I said before, is like a fully realized character who's made his mistakes. He's in, like, a stable place. Holland is in the worst place he's ever been, and Andrew is also clearly not in a good place, like, emotionally. Like, even if he's, like, capable, he's, like, clearly, like, not doing well on the inside. And we see that. And, like, I always, like, prefer the characters who have, like, you know, growth to do. And Tobey did a little bit in this movie, but, like, his arc is the less substantial of the three because he's already had his growth. We've already seen it, so.
Right, he's more, I'm too old for this shit. That's more him.
Yeah, and he's great, and his role in this is great. It's just like, because Andrew still kind of had a little bit left to learn and like a little bit left to prove, I think that's why I kind of vibed with his role in this story a little bit more than I did with Tobey's. Love them both. Prefer the Raimi series, but I still think they did justice by Andrew. They did him good. They did him well.
I love the whole the banter and the scenes, you know, where they talk about the villains they fought in the past and comparing each other. It was so cool.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love
Oh man, I think it was like, oh man, I wanna fight an alien or something like that.
It's like, wait, you guys have fought aliens? I want to fight an alien.
Yeah.
I liked oh, sorry, go ahead, Luke.
Oh no, I was just gonna bring up something I said in the beginning. How the fan service was the strength and the weakness of this movie. Because take away all the fan service and there's really no story. It's like if you the fan service is like with the movie is like a full Thanksgiving turkey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take the fan service away and it's just the carcass.
Yeah, but the thing is, fan service is only as good as you're able to write it, right? So like we already talked about how fan service can be hollow, which would make it bad, but because it was not hollow and it was used to, at least for the most part in this movie, to a greater arc for the main character, as well as like a resonant, like emotional, like a lot of pathos. Essentially, it delivered on a lot of the arcs for a lot of characters. Surprisingly, I think that's why it works for me, at least. You know, I don't really mind. Like as long as they do it well, you know, I'm fine with fan service.
The movie that was speculated before this was announced, I would have much preferred to see, where Spider-Man's on the hunt from the cops and the FBI or whatever, and then Kraven the Hunter comes and gets him, or tries to get him.
That would have been interesting, because that would have been obviously very different from what we'd seen before. I would have definitely liked to see something like that, but I'm more than happy with what we got. Because in what world, man? In what world? Like, obviously our world is far from perfect, but the fact that this movie, with characters and like, you know, like actors from different franchises owned by different studios that like have butted heads and like haven't been able to see eye to eye and like always get into like fights over like rights of these characters and rights of these stories. The fact that somehow a perfect storm happened and this movie was able to be made, and it's not just like stupid dumb fan service, there's actually like emotional resonance, and like it does justice to the characters, and it like, you know, pays homage in the right ways, and it like advances the storylines of other characters in really incredible ways. Like it's really kind of like a miracle that this thing even came to be, and that's kind of like what I kind of keep coming back to. And will that make it good on like repeat viewings, or like will it make it like endlessly rewatchable, or will it make it like one of the best movies ever made? I don't think so necessarily, but I think because it cashes in on your nostalgia, man. It like really does, but I think it does so respectfully for the most part, and that's what I really, really like about it.
Now, the upcoming Flash movie, on the other hand, they are not going to do the respectful part at all.
You don't think so?
Oh, no. No. That's just going to be, hey, look, guys, we got Michael Keaton because the story sucks. So come see our movie, please.
Well, I mean, if they just adapt Flashpoint, like that's all they need to do.
Yeah, but it's if they're serious about the Flash, it's way too soon to adapt Flashpoint.
Yeah.
This is just Warner Brothers saying we have no idea what we're doing and we want to soft reboot our universe. Here's Flashpoint.
That kind of is the DCMO, is like we haven't done any of like the legwork that Marvel did with like building up their universe. We're just gonna jump right in, baby. No lube. Here we go. You know? But anyway, we've been talking about this movie for a while. Do you guys want to do like do you guys have anything big to say before we do like final thoughts, kind of like wrap up thoughts?
Not really. No.
Okay. All right. Well,
Natalie, wait. Does Natalie have anything to say?
Thinking.
Oh.
Thinking.
thinking. Bueller.
Still thinking.
Well, the thing is,
No, I do have something to say. I think I wanted to mention it before, but then we changed the topic.
oh, okay.
We had talked about the storyline where the plot of Holland Peter becoming trying to save them.
Yeah.
One of my small gripe is that in MCU we often have to overlook the smaller details in some plot lines, and sometimes we just have to take it because we're told to take it. You know, sometimes to me it's just a little bit too crazy. For example, he went on a mission to save the villains. To save them from what? In some cases it's like physical ailments, like Lizard, right? He wants to have his human body back and have his full limbs.
Yeah.
And not be a lizard. But other times it's like, what exactly are you curing here? Is this science, or is this just like we just have to take it because you're telling us?
Yeah.
I can't like how are you curing Norman Osborn?
Well,
you can't. He's mentally ill.
Yeah, exactly. I had a problem with that. Which makes the idea of having him in the end not be cured, which would have fit the storyline better.
I mean, like, there are two Spider-Man villains you can't redeem: Green Goblin and Carnage. They're complete psychopaths.
Green Goblin and Carnage.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fair, because even before Norman Osborn became a monster man with green goo going in around his veins or pumping through his veins, he was also like a fucking bigwig, capitalist asshole motherfucker.
Right.
Like he was never exactly he was also like a neglectful father. He was never exactly a good guy, So
I actually rewatched that scene where he was in the boardroom when they fire him, and they were so rude to him, so disrespectful.
Yeah.
You remember that scene? And that old man just sips his tea. He's like, "You're out, Norman." Like, that is rough. Imagine you're squeezed out of your multi-million-dollar company that you made.
Oh, so sad. I'm crying big crocodile tears over losing my war profiteering business. Oh, so sad. I can't make weapons to kill innocent people in fucking Indonesia anymore. Oh, boo-hoo. The tears just won't stop. Yeah, fuck Norman Osborn. I love Willem Dafoe, but fuck Norman Osborn. So, yeah.
I love Willem Dafoe that much.
Like,
spilling it for Norman.
I think I do. I like the character of Norman Osborn in those movies because they do a good job, kind of humanizing him. But at the same time, like, I never felt bad for the guy. I was just like, oh, okay, like he's kind of just like a guided guy who, is just kind of frustrated and. Like is I would need to rewatch the movie to like make any sort of like deep any like have a deep take about it or something, but that's kind of like at the end of the day I do agree that I think it would have been more resonant if it wasn't like if he didn't get cured, if he was just a bad motherfucker, but I like that unlike in so many other movies where it's just like, oh, you got to punch the guy hard enough or just beat him up enough that they that they die. You just got to kill the guy. I like that Spider-Man like sticks to his morals and like his values. That's something I've always loved about the character, and I like that that's like a big focus here is like not resorting to murder and like trying to help people even when they are have done things that are morally reprehensible, and like because they do need a lot of times people like that do need help, and that's why they resort to those things, like getting away from these characters and who they are and the morally repugnant things they've all done. It's like at the end of the day, like the general message of like don't give up on people just because like they've done something bad or they have even just like bad thoughts, or like if all we do is just like every time we run into someone that we find to be bad or gross or morally repugnant is just give up on them, it's just it's just not a good solution. Like you can't give up on people.
But to anyone listening to this, if you're in an abusive relationship, you give up, get the hell out of there.
Oh yeah, no, that's obviously different, and that's not what I'm trying to say.
No, I know. I'm just making that clear. Making that very clear.
Thank you for spelling that out for the kids at home. I appreciate that.
Ladies, you cannot fix him, okay?
Yeah.
He needs serious therapy. He needs to get hit in the head, okay? The moment he touches you or the moment he says something bad about you, you get the fuck out of there.
Well, okay. There's a little bit of projection there, but whatever.
No, there's no projection. It's just the way it is. If he's a bad guy, you leave him.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's easy. It takes about, on average, 7 times, but please.
Okay. No, yes, of course. Anyway, moving on to final thoughts. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. Before we get to final thoughts, what do we think of the villains in this movie? Do we like the interactions with them? How do we feel about these guys? What do you guys think?
Some of them were underused.
Yeah.
I think there was obviously there was more of a focus on Green Goblin and Dr. Rock, who are considered like the strongest actors.
Yeah, and Electro.
And Electro, that's true. Yes, that's true. The others were overlooked, not like they could have they could have done a little bit more, but then I'm also asking for more screen time, which makes the movie longer. You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
It's such a hard balance.
It's a hard problem to fix.
What I didn't like with what they did with one of the villains is they made Sandman dumb. I don't trust anyone, blah, blah, blah. It's like, this isn't how we left you off.
Yeah, Sandman didn't have, like, a mental illness. He was just a sand person in, like, a bad situation. So, like, unlike the other guys who have, like, literal, like, you know, they've been, like, possessed by some sort of, like, demon, kind of, for basically all of the other characters, except for maybe, I don't know, maybe not Lightning Boy. He might be, I don't know. I would need to rewatch those movies. I think he's just, you know, vindictive, kind of. But, like, Sandman, like, yeah, he kind of had a grudge against Spider-Man, but it, like, once he realized, like, who Spider-Man was in relation to, like, Uncle Ben, like, he was like, oh, my bad. Like, I don't have a reason to fight you. And, like, him having a reason to fight back, I guess he wants to get back home to see his daughter, but, like, dude, literally they were trying to help you get back home. What are you fucking doing fighting them? Like...
Right, and then when he tried to drown Tobey Maguire, it's like, you what?
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense.
That makes no sense. That's 100% true.
Yeah.
I will say though, I loved Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx in this movie. I like I said, with the characters from with Jamie Foxx and Andrew Garfield, I was like, wow, they've really like recontextualized both of these characters to make me like, from taking me from like kind of not giving a shit about them to like actually liking them and like finding their struggles and plights like compelling. And with Alfred Molina, I thought he was really funny. I was kind of worried that they were gonna like do a bunch of Marvel humor and have a lot of like, and they do a little bit, but it's like, it's funny though. Like I like when he's like wrapped up by his own arms and Aunt May's like, do you want some like something to drink? And he's like, yeah, I actually am pretty thirsty. Like that was just straight up hilarious. Just like the little slice of life humor with them was so funny.
I thought she was like kind of flirting with him, which I know is a little. I know that in.
Oh my god! Yeah.
In one of the comics, they get married, don't they?
Huh?
Yes. I read about this.
What
so
the fuck?
Think that was like that's a little reference to their hookup.
I didn't even put that together. You're right.
Oh
yeah,
god.
Just flirting with him.
I mean, she did just break up with Happy, like technically.
She did.
She's a free agent.
I want to know what happened though.
She can get that octo dick if she wanted to.
Yeah.
But anyway, but like Willem Dafoe, like really the breakout star of this film, like what they did with him, like kind of like showing him sort of as like the most reasonable of the villains and like being like, no, like I'm actually not that bad, to do the heel turn to be like, oh no, I'm actually the big bad of this movie. I'm the main bad guy. I'm going to kill your aunts. And like, dude, I love him in those original, in like the Raimi movies, but I have never been more intimidated by Willem Dafoe's Goblin than in this film. Because everything he does has so much narrative weight to it. He kills Aunt May, a character who's been there for like 5 movies at this point. holy shit, bro. Like,
Yeah.
oh my god.
Yeah. When
It was scary.
When I rewatched the first one, I realized his whole thing, it was a battle between philosophies of the responsibility and humility, selflessness versus everything Nietzsche taught.
Mhm.
But here it was again on full display, and it was that much scarier.
Oh yeah. They did it even better this time with it, because he's like, yeah, we have the power of gods. Why should we settle, is like what he kept saying. Like, why should I want my gifts taken away and to be sent to my death? Like, fuck that. Fuck saving my soul. I'm going to like take. That's what I have the power for that reason alone. And Peter being like kind of tempted by that almost, because he almost kills him. He's like, yeah, I do have the power to beat your ass. I do have the power to kill you. But then in the end, he chooses not to. And I like, outside of like the weird stuff that happens with him getting like cured and like not remembering anything, like I like all of the beats around leading up to that. I think all the beats, character beats, and all the thematic beats leading up to that are all like really, really strong. And I fuck with it.
Yeah. I fuck with the whole movie.
Yeah, me too.
It has to buy me dinner
I really do.
Yeah.
I would just appreciate how this movie, what it's done, has never been done before, and just opens up the doors for so many other things to come. Really.
Yeah.
Well, I'm already tired of the Spider-Verse thing, though. It's like, Into the Spider-Verse. This is cool. This is new. This is fresh. This movie, okay, this is cool. This is new. This is fresh. And now I'm thinking, oh god, what are they gonna do and milk this to death?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that they kind of go back to being like, I love the Into the Spider-Verse movie, and I'm looking forward to the sequel of that movie because I think those writers really know what they're doing. But yeah, like I hope this is the last. Because this movie must have been a nightmare to make and coordinate because of how many fucking like huge. I haven't looked at the budget, but this must have been like one of the most expensive movies ever made. Like just the amount of like talent and like how long it is and how much like fucking special effects there are, and like just the paying for the talent alone, like the different actors and people involved. Like it's just that must have been a fucking fortune. So like the fact that two studios had to commingle, like Sony and Disney and like Marvel, who like generally have been like at odds and like kind of have like a tenuous business relationship that is very publicly like been brought the shit gets dragged into like the spotlight, and there's always articles about like, oh well, Sony's completely pulled out, and like they won't even let Disney, like this is like 2 years ago they were like, oh yeah, they're not even gonna let Disney use Spider-Man anymore, and they need to like renegotiate, and like at that point in time we're like, oh fuck, maybe they're gonna like fuck the MCU over by doing that. But the fact that like it all came together into this this final product, it's pretty crazy. I'm amazed that like I'm amazing Spider-Man. I'm amazed that we got to see something like this in our lifetime. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not one of the most expensive movies made. I'm going down the list.
It is close to becoming the most highest grossing movie of all time.
Yeah, it's currently the sixth.
Number 6, and they think it's going to be number 1. We'll see.
That's cool.
But yeah, I mean,
but Luke, to go along with what you're saying, I also hope that like the next, if they make more Holland movies, and it seems like they're going to because they've just been wildly successful, I really hope they go back to like a more grounded setting. And I think now that no one knows who, like my hope for future movies in the Peter Parker, Tom Holland's edition trilogy, or just movie series in general, is that they kind of like have him team up with more street level people, if they're going to have him team up at all. Like I would love to see like a thing with like Kingpin and Daredevil with him. That could be really neat.
Oh, I would love that.
Oh, yeah, I'd accept the interconnectivity if it was heroes like that. Yeah
like if they're gonna do like, and we already have my man Charlie Cox in this movie, so they could easily do that, and they've announced a Daredevil show, so it could happen. But like that's really what what I would want to see is like getting back to like kind of a little bit more grounded. I do think there will always, like, they've opened the door to like, you know, mystical elements. So I'm not against that, but I would really like for the next movie to get back to like the roots of like a more grounded aesthetic, being like a hero in New York who no one knows. Literally, dude's all alone, all on his lonesome. So yeah, I think that'd be what I want to see.
I think that will probably happen, you know, since they did lay the groundwork. They have Daredevil there. He's been introduced, so he's like canon. He's set there in that universe, so that'll probably happen.
Yeah, Daredevil will probably be the next one.
Yeah, I'd definitely love to see it like definitely darker than what we've seen in the past 3 films.
Yeah, maybe a little grittier.
Gritty, darker.
Not so gritty that there's no humor or like things to laugh at, but just like
I think there'll always be humor. It is the MCU.
Yeah, and it is Spider-Man. Spider-Man's a funny guy.
Yeah, I could see it being Daredevil though, because like you said, he's on his lonesome, and Daredevil's already gone through that with season 3. I mean, I know it's the Netflix stuff isn't completely canon, but maybe they can they can pick and choose what they want to keep canon.
Yeah,
and Daredevil can guide him with all that.
Yeah, for sure. That would be awesome. I would just love to see a team up. I think that'd be really cool. But I'd also just like to see like, you know, like something that's just like, now that all of his Stark connections have been severed, what are you going to do? Like, I really hope they don't like retcon this later, or like I hope they don't go back on these big bold decisions they've made, because that's, to me, the big bold decisions about like separating Peter Parker from the rest of the crew. It's not only emotionally resonant, but it just gives so many they basically have a clean slate. They can do so many things now, and I just hope they do something that feels true to the character and like kind of recenters it around Peter being like his own man. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. Well, anyway, any other closing thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
10 out of 10.
What was that?
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. I don't know if I'd give it quite a 10
Maybe
out of 10.
9.5. We're talking high.
For me, it's at least an 8.5. I really like it. Just hit me. Like, it's.
Are we talking Marvel standards or just film in general?
No, just.
I'm doing just general.
Yeah, I'm just general, I guess. Like, in terms of how much I liked it, like I really liked it, and it fucking got the waterworks going, which is like the fact that I was so emotionally invested, and like I like the
you
themes
normally cry in film, like typically?
Do I?
Yeah.
I mean, not too often. I mean, like, if I'm really feeling something, and the thing is, that's super subjective, right? Like, the fact that I was feeling it doesn't necessarily make it good or bad. It just means like I liked it so and so amount. So for me, yeah, like it being above an 8 is how I feel about it personally, because I resonated with what was in it.
Right, and like you said, that sort of stuff is subjective with resonating. Because like I cried during The Room when I watched it once. So
okay, yeah, fuck.
Don't
yeah.
know.
I mean, The Room is a 10 out of 10. The Room's an 11 out of 10. Let's just
No, you're right about that. Definitely, it is like it kicks Godfather's ass.
Oh, for sure.
There's.
Which scene did you cry in?
The sex scene.
Or did you just cry for the whole movie?
No,
It's so bad.
I was cutting onions the whole time.
No, now we're gonna get dark. I cried when I was nearing the suicide stuff.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, yeah, you're an idiot vampire thing, but don't kill yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're listening, don't kill yourself, because that would be bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Just eat macaroni and cheese instead.
The ultimate substitute for killing yourself.
Yep.
Anyway, I guess that concludes this episode of the podcast. Thank you all for listening, and yeah, we'll see you later.